60, The Answer.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. The D.C. press corps we were just talking about before the news, really trying to whip up a frenzy around this security clearance story involving Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, as well as others unnamed that allegedly were not recommended for security clearance, but were overruled. The personnel office overruled by the president, suggesting, as Ocasio-Cortez did, that the next thing the Trump administration will do, so reckless with our national security, is this administration is post the nuclear codes on Instagram. It's cute. This is also the same president, though, that is currently willing to at least take the rhetorical position of shutting down the border to gain control of what everyone who is not running for the Democrat nomination for president understands is a humanitarian crisis and a national security threat on the southern border. For more on the media coverage of this and the timing, too, of this security clearance story, we're pleased to be joined again, and back by popular demand.
Oh, yeah.
Great response last time she was on. Lara Logan, former CBS News foreign correspondent and, of course, 60 Minutes correspondent as well. Lara, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So how have you received this story about security clearances, the threat that it allegedly poses, the context and consequence or lack thereof that the D.C. press corps has provided?
So it's funny because my first response is the Secretary of State put an unsecure email server in her basement.
Right.
And you want to talk about a security risk?
Yeah, but that's Hillary. She's beyond reproach. Security. Yeah.
The hypocrisy of it is just staggering to me. So I'll be straight up. I'm not reporting on the security clearance issue. So I don't have all the details and all the information. But I do know this. There is no greater threat to national security than taking classified information, which is classified all the way up to the highest levels, and putting it on an insecure server in your basement, violating every rule of handling of classified information, every law, sorry, not rule. Let's be very clear. These are not rules. They're actually laws. And then letting people like, your aides store them on computers that your husband has access to who has zero security clearance. And by the way, then giving it to your law firm, of which who in that law firm had a security clearance that entitled them to be in even the same vicinity as classified information. Only 2 people had clearances, according to the law firm itself, and neither of them were secure compartmentalized information, which is the highest level of clearance. And much of that information in Hillary Clinton's server, not much, but some of it. Even if one email was at that level, it's a violation of the law. So, first there's a double standard. Now, the double standard doesn't mean if something was done wrong here, that there's no accountability and that, nothing was done wrong. But you're right. The timing is extraordinary. And what's so interesting to me and really encouraging is that you're seeing the patterns. Do you see the pattern of how people are smeared, the pattern of how propaganda is used? This has been the same pattern since this president was elected. And it's been a pattern that's actually used before, but now it's coming sharper into focus. And to me, the most encouraging thing of all is that people are seeing this for what it is now, because that means that the dishonest people, the propaganda that's driving it, is being exposed. And that's the best security that I have. That's the only job security I have, quite frankly, is that honest people with no political agenda will recognize what's happening and stand together against it and say this is wrong. And we're not going to let these people corrupt our democracy. We're not going to let them corrupt one of the most important professions that we have when it's done right, and that's journalism.
I wanted to also get your reaction because it seems like there's a bit of a crack-up going on the D.C. press corps side too, particularly some of its most important thinkers and communicators. Rachel Maddow this week in an apparent fight with her Chiron writer for her show because Rachel Maddow is talking about how Bill Barr is going through the Mueller report and redacting information he wants to redact without consultation from Bob Mueller, while the Chiron says just the opposite underneath Rachel Maddow talking, because the fact is The Attorney General is working with the special prosecutor to get agreement on what should be redacted before the report is released in a couple of weeks. But it's just amazing to me that Maddow would be so reckless with the truth for the purposes of sort of instigating, an implicit conspiracy theory. Barr is now the next guy in line to protect the cover-up and paper over Trump's obstruction of justice and the like. That's really what she's trying to drive.
The thing is this. I'm not inside Rachel Maddow's show, right? So I don't know exactly what happened, and I don't want to guess. But what I do know is this. There are good people in the intelligence agencies and in the press corps and in these shows who know what the truth is. And I'm counting on them to stand up for the truth. I'm counting on them to do the right thing because that's all we have. At the end of the day, I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have a propaganda information infrastructure that spans hundreds of lawyers and hundreds of employees. I don't have tech people working for me, a staff of tech people who are manipulating metadata and pushing the stories that they want to the fore and creating negative stories about people and targeting. I don't have an army of journalists that are colluding, if you like, with my political operatives. I don't have any of those things. I have one thing, and it's called the truth. And thank goodness for all of us that there is actually only one truth, right? Because people like to pretend that the truth depends on where you were born and the color of your skin and, how you grew up. No, it doesn't, actually. How you feel about it, how you perceive it, what you think people should do about it, those things are subjective. But the truth itself is just the truth itself. It can't be anything other than that. And I know, and I'm counting on people like you. You're not just going to just put me on the radio when you agree with what I'm saying, right? Because if you know that I'm saying something that's honest and I'm doing my best, then there's still going to be an opportunity for me to come on your show and speak. That's what I'm counting on. And I'm not surprised that people like Rachel Maddow are behaving the way they are. It's extremely disappointing because, the entire press corps was baying for my blood when two small things about one person in one story I did were called into question. Nobody ever proved that they were wrong. They may be wrong, but no one ever proved it. And these people wanted me. They didn't just want my job. They wanted my entire career. They wanted to destroy me, take everything from me, make me unemployable, so I couldn't feed my children. Okay, I don't think there's a human being out there listening to that who can think that's right.
No, I've been there. I thought they wanted me dead. I'm like, I don't think they're going to leave me alone for a situation that I had until I'm dead.
You see?
I honestly, did you ever
wrong.
feel that
and
same way?
And you know what, Amy? I'm standing up for you. I'm standing up for you and every other person that's been targeted. And I'm standing up for every person in this country, and I know there are millions, who want honest journalism and independent journalism and who are tired of these propaganda assassination teams of political operatives with all the resources they have trying to silence us and trying to destroy us. We're not going to do it anymore. So perhaps there's a Chiron writer who's standing up and doing the right thing. I bet there is. I don't know this guy was doing it because I don't have the information and the details, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm some kind of prophet who's all-seeing and all-knowing, right? I'm not. But I know that there's good in people. I know people stand up and do the right thing because history is littered with examples and because I have that in me, and I'm not the only one.
Well, so this is interesting you raised this because after you were on our program last time, and it was such a great interview, and you just offered a tour de force on the media and the Mueller report. Amy and I were talking off air, and it was just like, well, why isn't she, have some high-profile gig in on a cable network station, or is she not back working as a foreign correspondent or whatever she wants to do in media? And so describing what happened to you towards the end of your time at CBS, what is your status with respect to working in the media again?
Well, it's a good question. What I'm thinking is that today, there's lots of downsides to technology, but one of the upsides is that you don't have to be filtered through other organizations anymore in order to have a voice. Now, would I still love to be doing stories on 60 Minutes? Absolutely. I just absolutely love that format and worked with some of the best people ever. But in this day, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep being a journalist. And no matter who I'm doing that for, whether it's freelance or whether I have my own podcast, those are the things I'm going to keep doing, the things that I have control and power over, because I can't force people to hire me. But what I can do is I can stay true to myself, and I can keep doing my job. And I've been working with an amazing production company out of Missoula, Montana, awesome guys who already have taught me a lot about the world they work in. And we've been working on a series about the wars. Nobody's picked it up yet, which is kind of stunning to me. But we're working on some other things too. And I've got to do my book, because finally I have a reason to do this book. And before, honestly, for 20 years, people have said to me, "Are you doing a book? Are you doing a book?" I could think of nothing more painful and torturous than having to write about my own life and my own self. A book whose only purpose is to serve me is a book that I just couldn't write, to be honest with you. I just couldn't do it. But now I have a book to write. Now people need to know what I've done so they can understand when I say the model of great journalism, I inherited it, I didn't invent it, and I'm trying to pass it on. They'll see that. They'll recognize that in my work and my experience. They'll understand where this is coming from. And that is, now I have a reason to do this book. So if I can just get done with the laundry and the dishes and the homework and the makeup work.
You should get people.
And by the way, I live in the country and there's not a whole bunch of help out here.
No.
You know, if I can get done with all of that, then I can meet my deadlines and get this going. But I'm going to do it. I will. I promise you that.
All right. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids, and if you count my husband, I have another 6.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
I'm
come
with
on
you,
now.
sister. Oh, no, that's so it's just another person to pick up after. It's so annoying.
He's going to kill me.
I want to. I was talking about the new communication channels. You don't need to be hired by somebody to have your voice heard to put content out into the public arena. How did you react to Mark Zuckerberg this week, sort of welcoming the government into running his business for him when it comes to particular content, and the idea of government getting involved with respect to social media communication channels, which are so important now?
Well, to me, this is so interesting. And my question as a journalist has always been, why are we talking only about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica? Why are we not talking about Twitter, for example? I know extraordinarily gifted tech people who thought, okay, this is the beginning, right? It's all about to crumble when Facebook was, called before Congress and it became a big deal and the news all broke. There's not a tech company in existence that isn't collecting and relying on data, right? Data is the most valuable resource on the planet. Nothing is more valuable than that. And we're all giving it up for free. Nobody's holding back. And why is it so difficult to turn off your Apple device? Because no matter what you're doing, wherever you are, 24/7, they want that on collecting your data because they make billions and billions of dollars out of it. Mm-hmm. So really what we're doing, it's almost like everyone has, a gold, their house is built on a gold mine. And they're saying, Facebook, Twitter, all of you people, come mine my gold mine for nothing. You can have it all. Have my most precious resource for free. But the hypocrisy of targeting Facebook only is just staggering to me. And it's obvious what it was about. I mean, and this is my opinion, right? People, this is not fact. But when you look at the landscape, and every poll and every pundit is talking about the power of Facebook, and most people get their news from Facebook. Facebook were the number one target. How do I know that? Because in Media Matters for America's propaganda document, their strategy for the post-Trump era, they name Facebook specifically. They say specifically Facebook was the most powerful, and therefore they are the number one target. So guess who's working hand in hand with Facebook now? The government is one thing, but even worse, they're working hand in hand with Media Matters for America, who's writing their algorithms for them that recognize what they define. Media Matters defines as hate speech. Mm-hmm. So now you have a propaganda organization advising Mark Zuckerberg and his team. I mean, before you even get to the federal government, that's the thing that bothers me the most, because how do they define it? They're not looking for algorithms that purely monitor hate speech, because they're a self-confessed propaganda organization with their own stated agenda, which is resisting the normalization of Donald Trump at any cost and removing him from office, either by impeachment or at the ballot box in 2020. And as a result, they've built an information infrastructure and network, which includes, by the way, taking over the nonpartisan ethics watchdog, an organization called CREW, which used to be left-leaning but try to be nonpartisan. These are good people. But once they were taken over by David Brock, they became another an attack dog in his propaganda strategy. And what they've done now is launch hundreds of lawsuits against this administration to make sure they can't function because they're so busy trying to defend themselves in courts. Who thinks that's good? Is there an American out there who thinks that's right? So if you like the administration, you like the president, you'd still support that? Of course you wouldn't. Look at the principle of it. It's wrong. The principle of it is wrong. So, I would say Mark Zuckerberg, I'm not really surprised, right? I mean, in terms of my judgment of character, I don't know the guy, but look at the way he came to have all this power. He didn't campaign as a leader. He was someone who had a brilliant idea and he made it happen. So I'm surprised he has zero leadership qualities as he's exhibiting in this moment. No, I'm not really surprised. But what I'm much more concerned about is that he and his teams are working hand in hand with propaganda organizations. And I'm much more concerned about those people on the Hill who are supposedly holding him accountable are not holding anybody else accountable. And that's a problem for me. You targeted the platform that even the progressive movement's propaganda attack dog says was the most important to them. But you're not targeting the others to the same standard, which means you're not upholding a principle. And that's a problem.
She is Lara Logan, always interesting perspectives. Former CBS News foreign correspondent, 60 Minutes correspondent. Hopefully we'll see more of her work, like she mentioned. On a streaming service or television
when you write your book, we'll
station
have
somewhere.
on.
Yeah, and
There's
your book
motive.
too.
Finish your book and come on.
Maybe not Facebook after what I just said.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you've been targeted now. You're on the list. You just made the list. Lara Logan, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with